Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to the Cowboys Beat. On today's video, we're going to be talking about Malik Hooker's comments about Micah Parsons' podcast. He went on Keyshawn Johnson's show, talked about a multitude of things, but this is the thing that is going to garner a lot of headlines, and I feel like I have to talk about this. But before we get in the video, please make sure to hit that like button. Let's get this video to 20 likes. I would greatly appreciate that, guys. And also make sure to hit that subscribe button as well. But without further ado, let's get in the video.
Problem with it. My thing would be though, for Micah, my advice would be for Micah would be, just make sure we're all right, where we're and being where your feet are. Because if we're at work and the run game's terrible, but you're doing a podcast every week and the run game is terrible, then what are you really caring about? Are you caring about the crowd that is watching your podcast? Are you caring about the success of our team and the Super Bowl that we're trying to reach? See what I'm saying? So
I want to start this off by saying this. There is a reason why I try to be objective as possible. Okay? And the reason why I try to be objective when it comes to covering this football team is because when I have to defend certain players, certain coaches, certain front office personnel, when I defend them, it means more than when I put the cape on for every situation, even though they're blatantly wrong in certain situations. I've criticized Micah Parsons this offseason quite a bit because I felt like criticism was warranted in these situations. However, in this situation, I'm going to defend Micah Parsons. He did nothing wrong. There's no reason that Malik Hooker had to say what he said on Keyshawn Johnson's podcast. No reason whatsoever. When he talks about, hey, when the run game's bad, worry about the run game. We're starting to think like, oh, do you care about your podcast audience or do you care about the team? First off, Micah Parsons cares about winning. Okay, he does. He might show it in a different way than other players on the Cowboys, but he cares about winning. Second point, Micah Parsons signed a contract with Bleacher Report to do a podcast with them weekly. That is Bleacher Report's responsibility to push the content, to obtain an audience, to maintain an audience. That's Bleacher Report's responsibility. That's not Micah Parsons' responsibility. He turns on the camera, he talks for 30, 40 minutes, however long he wants to talk for, and it's on Bleacher Report to get the content out there and to go get an audience. Micah Parsons gets paid regardless. And people are going to come and tune into Micah Parsons because he's that big of a name, because he's that important, because of the player he is. People want to hear him talk. So I don't believe Micah Parsons has to go out there and put all this effort into obtaining an audience. That's Bleacher Report's responsibility, and he's going to get that regardless because of who he is, because of the player he is, because of the performance that he's shown over the past 3 seasons that he's been in the NFL. What Malik Hooker did here was exactly what he should not have done. It is June, okay? ESPN, Fox Sports 1, all these other websites that talk about football are craving content right now. They want content. They have nothing to talk about. And when you put out a quote like this, they're going to ram this into the ground. They're going to talk about this on every A block they can talk about this on for every show. First things first, get up, first take, undisputed, speak, all these things. And they're going to talk about the chemistry within the Cowboys locker room. They're going to talk about, oh, this team, the vibes are bad around this team. And this is just another example about it. The sky's falling down in Dallas, even though it's not. This is one of the most talented rosters in football. Whatever they want to do this season, they can still do it, even with the talent that they lost. If they're coached properly, if they buy into the philosophies that are being implemented within this football team, they can do whatever they want. That's how talented they are. Do they have flaws? Sure. They can fix the flaws that they have because it's mainly personnel like running back, defensive tackle, but I'm getting off on a tangent. They can fix that stuff. Chemistry within the locker room, it takes a long time to get that. And if you lose that, it takes a long time to rebuild that. And comments like this are going to hurt the chemistry within the locker room. Malik Hooker could have told Micah Parsons this in person, over text, over the phone, whatever it may be. Because apparently this was news to Micah Parsons. He didn't know that Malik Hooker felt like this. And I'm sure if his teammates felt like this about his podcast, I honestly believe that Micah Parsons would put the podcast aside. I truly believe that. I believe that Micah Parsons is dedicated to winning. I believe he wants to win with the Dallas Cowboys. He is one of the most talented players in football. I've been critical about Micah Parsons, and I will stand on the criticisms that I have. And I don't need to repeat them at the current moment. You can go find them on the page. But when it comes to what Malik Hooker said, and now not only is Malik Hooker giving the media bait and stuff to talk about, he gave fans that already feel a certain type of way about Micah Parsons more material to go off of. Now I'm seeing fans on X talk about Micah Parsons shouldn't have a podcast. He's selfish. He's this, that, and the third. Like, you didn't need to do that. You didn't need to, I'm looking for the right word here. You didn't need to make the situation worse. And what you did was made the situation worse. And you need to apologize about this publicly. And you need to understand that what you did was wrong here. Okay? Now, when it comes to Micah Parsons and his podcast, where do I stand on it? I say this. If players go out and golf on their off days, Micah Parsons can do a podcast on his off day. Now, there are certain things that I would prefer if players didn't do, right? I would prefer if players didn't go out and party during the season and take away focus from what really needs to be focused upon, which is trying to get this team a Super Bowl. But everybody lets loose. I get it. I understand that. And I'm not completely against that. I just prefer if they didn't do that and putting themselves in bad situations. It's kind of the same thing with Micah Parsons' podcast. I would prefer if he didn't do it, just because I've seen throughout the course of the season some of the quotes that he's put out there that has garnered the wrong type of attention. And personally, I don't believe that Micah Parsons is capable of not doing that, of not giving the media bait and material to talk about. So because of that, I would prefer if he didn't do that. I get it. Travis Kelce, Fred Warner, Max Crosby, these guys do podcasts. I understand that. They do a good job of not putting their team in the headlines. You know, I remember with the New Heights podcast, there was one time where Travis Kelce actually used the podcast to his benefit to call out people that were doubting his teammates in the wide receiver room. And he made front page news. He was the A block on ESPN, Fox Sports, all this, because he went out there and he said, you know, I can't remember the exact quote, but he was talking about, don't effing talk about my wide receivers. It was something along the lines of that. And that did good for the locker room, because now you have one of the leaders on your team, a guy who is a future Hall of Famer, a guy who is a very important part of your team, coming out there and defending a group within the team that has been heavily scrutinized and criticized. Now, Micah does that as well. Micah does that as well with certain people. You know, he did that with Dak. He came out and he defended Dak. And I love when Micah Parsons does that, because the narrative within the media is that, oh, well, they don't believe in their quarterback. Stephen A. Smith went on First Take and said that the Cowboys players didn't believe in Dak. It was false. It's not true. Micah Parsons went out on his podcast, didn't address that quote directly, but he put it out on Front Street. I believe in my quarterback. He can get the job done. And I am completely fine with comments like that if he uses the podcast to do stuff like that. But when you're talking about Brock Purdy and Tua, and you got to see these guys, and you lost to both of them. That's where I start to get to the point where it's like, I don't know, man. But that's besides the point. Malik Hooker shouldn't have done this. And I'm very disappointed in Malik. I didn't think that he was the type of guy that would go out there and do something like this. Unfortunately, he did. And I get it that there are fans saying that, oh, well, people are missing context with this video. And I get it. At the end of his little soliloquy there, he said, ultimately, I don't have a problem with Micah Parsons doing the podcast. But it's like, dude, If it walks like a duck, if it quacks like a duck, it's a duck. If the writing's on the wall, I'm going to read it. It's clear that he would prefer if he did not have a podcast. Maybe it's not like a hard stance that he's taking saying you shouldn't have a podcast. Maybe it's not that. But I do think that there's a part of Malik Hooker that says, yeah, I don't want you to do that. Which is like fine, but keep it in-house. Don't let that out. Because now you have fans that have material for Micah Parsons that already don't like him. And you have media members that have material for this football team. So ultimately, Malik Hooker is in the wrong for this, and I will defend Micah Parsons on this. Leave him alone. Leave him alone. Okay? There might be opportunities to actually criticize him. If you're somebody who wants to criticize him, there might actually be opportunities in the future where it's actually warranted. I hope there's not. I hope there's not. I hope Micah Parsons goes out there and shuts everybody up and has a 20-plus sack season, and he plays some off-ball linebacker, and he gets about 70 solo tackles, and this team wins the Super Bowl, and hell, he's the Super Bowl MVP. I hope that's the case. But when we talk about reality, if you're somebody who wants to criticize him, there's probably going to be opportunities in the future. Wait for those opportunities that are warranted. This is not warranted. Okay. So that's going to be it for the video though, guys. Make sure to hit that like button. I'd greatly appreciate it. And I'll see you guys in the next video.